All right, welcome back to an episode of the 86'd Life. I'm your host, Neil Strebig, joined in studio with Jake Bier from Brewery and Bier's Pub. How you doing tonight, man?
Pretty good. How are you?
Not too bad. But before we get started, a little bit of background on your business. Started War Streets in 2015, but didn't start actually brewing until 2016, yeah?
Correct.
All right, then took over Allegheny West, the neighborhood hangout Benjamin's, in what, August this year, right?
August 11th.
And then took it over
last
and
year, yeah.
made it Bier's Pub. Now, before I get into the whole Benjamin's and Beers thing, how did War Streets come about? What got you started on that? I mean, why craft brewery?
I guess the long and the short of it is I was home brewing, just really got into it, and decided I'd give it a shot. I was living in the War Streets, found a place to start it up, and just went for it.
All right.
The simpler answer is my last name's Bier, which is the cuter answer I usually give, but yeah.
The PC answer, so to speak.
Correct.
Now, how would you describe it? Your style and everything. I know you're doing the nano brewing, what's the difference in between a microbrew and a nano brew?
So a nano brew would be even smaller than a microbrewery.
Yeah.
So our system that we brew on every day or 3 days a week is about 50 gallons at a time, whereas a microbrewery is typically anything from 100 gallons on up to, 1,000 gallons or more.
Gotcha. So how many brews do you have on right now?
I'm running low right now. Yeah, right now I've got 3 of my own and then a bunch of guest beers while we kind of ramp back up and get ready for the spring.
Okay. And when you say guest beers, I mean, what are we talking about?
Talking about mostly local, definitely all Pennsylvania beers, but more specifically, mostly Pittsburgh. We've got some Hitchhiker brews on. We've got some Grist House, some Shoe Brew from Zelienople,
Okay.
Yellow Bridge from Delmont. I basically just try to get breweries that are self-distributing mostly and just try to showcase what they do.
Gotcha. Now, for y'all listening, when Jake says he's got the guest brews, that's at the tap room at Bier's Pub. When you started at War Streets, though, originally you're just Mexican War Streets on the north side. What was the original plan with that? You didn't really have Bier's Pub at the time. You didn't have a said location for it. So what took you from 2016, kind of a pipe dream, wanting to get started and you own a brew beer, to now you actually have a said location, you have the tap room, and now you're running your own beer plus a couple other local brews.
Yeah. How long do you have? Because it's a long story.
Break it down. No.
No, without going into too much detail, we went through some issues with the building that we started the business in.
Okay.
It was an old firehouse building on Arch Street in the War Streets.
All right.
So it was, one of the first firehouse buildings in Allegheny City.
Okay.
Back in those days, in the late 1800s, before Pittsburgh was the north side, it used to be known as Allegheny City.
Okay.
So this was engine house number 3, I believe.
Okay.
So there was a bunch of issues with the building. I'd be in there brewing and getting rained on while I was brewing. Just one thing after another that led to us kind of deciding it's better off to move on, find a better space, and just happened to be bartending at Benjamin's Burger Bar, which is where we are now, what
right
it used to be known
Weston,
as. So I was bartending there, found out that the owner wanted to sell, and just kind of pitched him the idea of me taking it over and moving the brew pub in, and then he went for it. So
Gotcha.
yeah,
I mean, that was a pretty brief story there. It didn't take too long, eh?
there's plenty more details that I kind of skipped over, but
No, I can imagine. But when you started Wishes, I mean, why the name? Why do you want to commit to the north side like that? And also, too, I mean, the style of brew, too. I mean, what exactly are you doing? You doing Belgians, doing lagers? Break it down.
I decided on War Streets Brewery because I live in the War Streets, so it was kind of fitting to, want to do my business where I live as well.
Mm-hmm.
I still believe that's what I want to do. And the name is simple. It's easy. You don't really need to get too fancy with a name, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And it allows me the opportunity, like our whole gig with naming our beers is after the streets. So instead of competing for all these different beer names that are out there, you go to the grocery store and you see all these wacky names to try and describe beers. And I went through that process when we were starting up on coming up with names for IPAs and stouts, and every name's already taken, trademarked.
Yeah.
So I just started thinking, well, I got to simplify this. Just name them after the streets. So we're in the War Streets. Our beers are all named after like Palo Alto Pale Ale, Monterey IPA, and so on and so forth. So,
Were there any? What were the names before War Streets? I'm kind of curious. Or any of the beer names?
God, I'm even trying to think at this point.
There's got to be a couple keepers back there.
There probably are, but I'm blanking at the moment. Something will come to me here soon.
All right. How was the response then from Northside residents and like your neighbors when this all got started in 2016? And then, I mean, even now, but you had said location. And I mean, I know when I go in there, I think it's kind of cool that you can sit there and see, as you just said, the Palo Alto Ale. But for Northsiders that are coming up from Observatory Hill, down the way from Brighton, we're going to cross from Troy Hill. I mean, they have a different response than Central Northsiders?
No, I think everything's been pretty positive. I think it's honestly been a kind of a happy accident that we ended up where we are now.
Okay.
In my opinion, it's in a better location. We get more local traffic. So we see a lot of people that live in the neighborhoods walking there. But then again, we also get the people from, like you said, Observatory Hill, Deutschtown, and other surrounding areas that come to Allegheny West because of a game or an event or some other reason.
Yeah.
So
now, your brew team, is it how many guys you got helping you out then? Because this all started as a one-man show, pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much. Right now, I've got one guy that helps me out. His name's Dan, but he'll be leaving soon. He's headed back out west to do a summer gig that he does.
Gotcha.
So I'll be back to a one-man team, and Abby, the other owner of Bier's Pub, she'll help me out from time to time.
Gotcha. And how do you? How it has to be hectic. I mean, here with a heavy weekend, you go through your stash. How many do you have basically just backloaded or are thinking about? And honestly, how long does the brewing process take then? Because if you're flying through them and it's just you, plus running the business, that's got to be just insane amount of just work.
It is. I'm still figuring out the equation on how to keep up and to make enough beer and manage the place so that everything runs smoothly.
Yeah.
So I don't have a complete answer on that, but more beer than I currently make is what I need to produce.
Gotcha. And then the new tap room, you guys just finished that up. What was that, about 2 weeks ago, 3?
Yeah, something like that.
And then that's going to be, 8 taps of just War Streets?
That's the plan.
All right.
Technically, the plan is we'll have 6 beers up front at the main bar, which would be mostly guest beers. Then I'll have 1 or 2 of mine up there.
Gotcha.
And the tap room will have 6 of my kind of regular beers that I'll have all year long. Maybe a seasonal and then a guest beer.
Gotcha. What's any upcoming seasonals before I dive into the Benjamin's takeover and just that level of stress in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, I have a Kolsch that's fermenting right now, so that'll be good for the summer. It's a really light German-style ale.
Okay.
Not hoppy at all, but has kind of a slight fruity flavor from the yeast. So that'll be good if the weather ever changes and gets nice out.
Gotcha. And then you've also stuck with the smaller batches because it's basically just one-man band. You can kind of fly through, and does that allow you a bit more flexibility then as well for what you can control?
It does. If I were to do it over again, I'd probably double the size that I'm on right now.
How comes?
Right. Well, I mean, it's the same amount of work.
All right.
Right? If you're brewing 50 gallons or 100 gallons, it's pretty much the same amount of hours that go into making a batch of beer.
All right.
It's just, number one, it's having the wherewithal to buy that equipment from day one, which is more expensive the bigger you get. And 2 is figuring out your recipes. So from that standpoint, I thought start small, kind of dial in your recipes, figure out how this is going to work out. That, along with we're brewing in a basement, so I wanted to make sure that we had enough space to do all of the work that we needed to do.
Gotcha.
And right now, I can see that we could get bigger, which is good.
Yeah.
So
how long is a typical batch then taken? Just for listeners because honestly, beer, completely unfamiliar with brewing it. Never tried it, no skill set at all in that regard. What's the normal process like then? Start to finish, timetable, fermenting time, Take me through it.
So it depends on the beer. That's a big
Yep.
part of it. But let's say you're brewing an IPA, for instance. The actual brew day would take between 5 to 6 hours. The first process is milling your grains, which is essentially getting the grains that you're going to use and cracking them, running them through a mill so it cracks the grains.
Okay.
And then you mash those grains in, basically steep them like a tea for about an hour, sometimes 90 minutes.
All right.
And then from that process, you drain what's now called wort, W-O-R-T, which is sugar water. You've essentially taken all the sugars out of those grains. You collect that and boil it for an hour, sometimes 90 minutes, depending.
All right.
Add your hops, other ingredients that you want to use. And then once that process is over, you chill the wort as quickly as possible, put it in your fermenter, add the yeast. The yeast eats all that sugar and turns it into alcohol, which is the process of fermentation.
Mm-hmm.
And that can take anywhere from 4 days to, sometimes 2 weeks. If you're doing a lager, which is literally translates to age, those typically take longer, 4 to 5 weeks.
Gotcha. Now, was there any breweries that you kind of were inspired by in this, like, they got you started in this, or was it more just fascination with beer and enjoying the beverage?
A little bit of both, but I was living out west in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and kind of got introduced to the whole craft beer scene out there.
Gotcha.
And saw some breweries and what they were doing and thought it was cool. Started brewing beer in my living room all throughout college. I like to say that I was brewing beer before I could legally buy it because the ingredients aren't illegal.
Yeah.
Just what the outcome happens to be
Once it
illegal
ferments,
if you're not 21. So I was doing that, and then from there just kind of got more and more into it. Moved back to Pittsburgh in 2013 and was working a job here and just kind of decided I'd give it a shot.
Gotcha. Now, in 2013, what was the craft beer scene like compared to where it is now? I'd imagine it's blown up significantly.
Significantly, yeah. I think when I moved back, there was a handful, maybe 10 breweries.
That's including, I
within the
imagine,
city.
Penn, yeah?
Including Penn,
Yeah.
yeah. But since then, I mean, it's more than doubled in size. There's 32 breweries in Allegheny County now.
Jeez. And then I've talked to you about this before off the air, but you guys are a pretty tight-knit group amongst the craft brewers. You guys all kind of communicate and talk amongst yourselves, yeah?
Yeah, it's a good community, very supportive. Nobody's out to, put anybody out of business.
Yeah.
I think Pittsburgh in general has enough beer drinkers to keep us all alive.
Yeah.
So.
Now, anybody that you have a kind of a close partnership with in that sector?
Penn Brewery's been really good to me. They've helped me out on several occasions. Most recently I brewed a batch of beer over there when I was just getting started and didn't have my equipment set up yet. So I reached out to them and asked if we could collaborate on a batch so that I could get some beer pumping through the taps.
Yeah.
They said absolutely, so we kind of just split everything. They've helped me out with kind of procedures and practices and testing, taking stuff to their lab when I want to check out what's happening with beer.
So it's way more pay it forward than I could kind of imagine that. It's really just, we got the equipment, we'll help you out, yeah.
They've done way more, than I could ever imagine, and it's hard to repay that, but they've helped me out quite a bit.
Yeah, and out with, especially, Penn Brew's on the north side, you're on the north side, ACB's over there, and naturally, you're familiar with this, wrote the piece way back in October about north side breweries, and it's about, 5 of them in a 3-mile radius there. But you're going to have, 412 possibly coming in the north side then as well. So you're going to have maybe 6. For the north side in general, how much of a lure do you think that has for each neighborhood, bringing in basically just clientele outside of football games to the neighborhoods, especially Allegheny West, to where some visitors might just be coming in just to check out your brewery, then shoot down ACB, shoot down to Southern Tier, head up to Penn, and then, Spring Hill will be opening up in a couple weeks.
Yeah. I think it's great to a point. I don't want to sound like a crotchety old man, but I certainly don't want the north side or Allegheny West to become the south side by any means.
Yeah.
Not hating on the south side, but I think everyone has an idea about the kind of scene that goes on there, late night party scene.
Yeah.
I think it's great that people want to come and check it out and see the north side and not be afraid of the north side, because I think that's been a long-standing idea that you don't go down there because
don't cross that bridge, yeah?
Don't cross that bridge. It's scary, right?
Yeah.
No, so I think breweries have a tendency to kind of bridge that gap, which they've done in several areas of the city. Homestead has Voodoo Brewery. You've got Braddock that's got the Brew Gentleman. Before those were there, a lot of people just didn't go to those parts of the town, North Side being one. Now I think it makes it more approachable, shows people that it's actually a really nice part of the city.
Nothing quite evokes harmony like a couple beers and getting drunk with friends, right?
Yeah.
Now, with the craft beer scene, though, too, anybody out here right now that you kind of, I don't want to say inspired by, but definitely want to kind of model War Streets after, or at least, look at them and be like, all right, you know what? I want to get to that level, and that's what I want to be doing. Because, I mean, right now, naturally, a lot of that's just manpower, which you don't have at this moment in time. But ideally, I mean, what's the long-term goal for you?
Yeah, I really like what a lot of different breweries are doing, so it's hard to pick just one.
Right.
Over the past 5 years, you've seen so many kind of grow up to multiple locations, bigger brew systems. So I think modeling after those guys and starting small. For example, Hitchhiker, they started brewing on I think a 3-barrel system in a basement in Mount Lebanon, and now they've got a huge warehouse building in Sharpsburg that they're brewing a ton of beer on. So it's just stepping stones to get to where you want to go, and growing organically instead of getting too big for your britches right off the bat. That's what I kind of think is the right avenue for War Streets Brewery.
Gotcha. Now, sticking with just Northside in general too, you guys, any of the with Penn, ACB, any of those cats within tier, any plans or anything as far as brew tours, or like, I know a lot of the races and events. I mean, you just had Imbibe up at Mattress Factory, where you guys all kind of came together for that as well. But any sort of tours to where you guys are all kind of synced up and combining outside of one said location, where you guys are just doing satellite kind of brewing?
Yes. I don't have all the details yet, but there's a Pittsburgh Brewers Guild that was recently formed.
Okay. That sounds like very intense. Sounds like the Masons or something.
I don't think it's quite as intense as that. We're not unionized or anything. But it's basically to promote craft beer tourism within the city of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So it consists of basically all of the breweries within Allegheny County. I think out of the 32, 30 so far have joined. So there's 2 that are still outstanding. But it's all the breweries coming together, and we're going to try to promote tourism by making a map, essentially a release that shows where each brewery is, kind of what their specialty is, what they do, and promote people wanting to go to those places.
Yeah.
And so part of that will be releasing this booklet, more or less, later this spring, maybe early summer. I don't know when they're going to have it ready. And all of the breweries are going to collaborate. Like we'll have 3 breweries or so on each beer, and we're all going to release those beers at the release party of this event, which will be most likely happening on the north side.
Nice. Now, when you say 3 of y'all going to be collaborating on like one beer, is that one style, or how's that working?
Yeah, it would be one beer. So like War Streets Brewery would team up with 2 other breweries. We're trying to do it at a brewery that's large enough that we can make enough beer on one batch to split it up and have it at the festival. So I think the cutoff is like any breweries that are 10 barrels or higher. So
Gotcha.
that eliminates me and a couple other places. But yeah, there would be 3 breweries making, say, an IPA that's kind of a different spin-off of what you'd normally see.
Yeah.
A little more creative, a little more intricate, that we'd release at that party.
Gotcha. Any particular then style though that you're hoping to do, or is it kind of like, hey, well,
I guess it depends on who I get paired up with.
Gotcha. And you guys are just doing it completely kind of random, or you guys?
As far as I know, we have a meeting next week. We're gonna figure that part out, and I'd like to collaborate with a group that I haven't already collaborated in the past. So that might determine what kind of beer style we make.
So who would that be then? Who are you kind of fingers crossed hoping to team up with?
Oh man, well, who has the nice equipment that I want to go check out? Let's see. I would like to see Hitchhiker in action or Grist House. They've got a really nice setup. So probably either of those two guys would be good. Yeah.
All right. Then shifting gears a bit off the craft beer, because I want to circle back to that. When you before you bought Benjamin's, and you had the issues kind of with War Streets, finding a place to brew. You don't want raindrops hitting your head every time you're making a batch. Was you starting to get kind of a rep though for War Streets, and people knew it was kind of out there, but didn't have a set location to buy it?
Yeah, it was a rough problem to have, especially when you live in the neighborhood that you're trying to open your business. It was pretty much daily I'd be getting asked, when are you going to open? When are you going to open? And I never had a good answer for months and months.
Yeah.
Just eventually. It would be winter, then it'd be spring, then summer, and then...
Which is tough, yeah. I can imagine that people start nagging and everything else, and, you're starting to sweat a little bit as well, I can imagine, yeah.
Sure. I wish I had a better answer. So, yeah, that went on for probably about a year, and then we finally got our licensing and then ran into several other issues with the landlord, etc. So we just decided to get out of there, move on.
Makes sense. And then kind of act of fate brings you to Benjamin's. And then with Benjamin's, though, how much of a problem was that then, kind of inheriting their clientele, their menu, somewhat of their staff, and then still in the back end, I imagine the whole goal then was to get the tap room going and really have just a set location for War Streets.
Yeah.
What was the process then when you bought that? What was your timetable being like, all right, how much are we going to keep like Benjamin's? And then how much do you have to phase out and really worry about the clientele then leaving? Again, it's a neighborhood kind of staple, so as long as people like the food, people are actually going to want to drink everything else instituting this. Was there any sort of worries that you're going to lose clients because you're bringing War Streets to Benjamin's?
Yeah, which is why we didn't change things immediately. Looking back, I kind of wish we just would have and kind of owned it from day one, but we didn't. We essentially took the business over on midnight, August 11th, and opened up at 11:30 on August 11th, and we owned the place. So it was
that's crazy.
It was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And I wish that we would have done it a little differently, but leading up to that moment, we were so anxious and so ready to just get started that we went for it. And it was good for our staff because they didn't have to lose their jobs for any amount of time while we were renovating or figuring out our own business strategies.
Yeah.
So it was essentially an overnight takeover.
Yeah.
Which made things a little more difficult for us in the long run in terms of creating our own identity, kind of moving on from Benjamin's.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been good and bad. Clientele stayed consistent. They come in because they like the food. The menu's great. It's been well put together. But in terms of where our focus needs to be, it should be on the beer and the brewery side. And the restaurant side of things can really take a lot of your attention away from everything else.
And that's especially if that's where most focus is too, from your immediate clientele when you first open it as well.
Right.
Now, how much of the food side do you actually want to kind of change? Is that going to stay relatively the same?
We were actually talking a lot about that today. We're trying to find ways to keep it simple for everybody. Have a simple menu that still kind of sticks to the basics. At the end of the day, what we're really good at is burgers. So I think we're really going to focus on doing burgers and beers. And they tend to pair well together.
True. And your guys' kitchen is literally maybe the size of 2 keyboards over here, honestly. I mean, it's tiny as hell. I mean,
yep. Everything's right behind the bar. So that's another issue, is how big of a menu do you really want to have when your cooking space is 2 by 2?
Yeah. And this is your first restaurant in general, yeah, that you've owned. You bartended, managed, and you had the brewery, but it's your first restaurant that you've ever actually owned and somewhat of a brick and mortar.
Correct.
Now, naturally, I can't fathom the stress in that regard, but when you take that over then like that, what was your immediate focus? Because to me, that's literally crazy. Less than 24 hours, it's like, boom, new ownership. And not that you ever sign outside the window, but wheels are spinning. And it's like, all right, what's the first order of business? What do we have to phase out? What do we have to change here to start getting the Bier's identity in?
Yeah, well, it was August, which is probably one of the busiest months that we have. And then that leads into football season. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we talked about what can we change, what can we do, but then I think our focus at that point was just getting through those busy months. So we would get through it, kind of see how the business is working, get some more ideas on, what is working food-wise and business-wise, and then in the slower months, kind of take time to reflect on it and make decisions that would lead us to the next spring/summer, which is where we are now. Gotcha. So we did all the renovations over those slow months, painted, put the tap room in, and put the brewery in, started dialing in recipes, etc., simplifying the menu, and hopefully that's going to lead us to a much simpler operation this summer.
Now, for those of you that don't know, the renovations, naturally you got the new tap room in there, looks sharp. The whole graffiti in the bathrooms, which is a nice little touch as well. And then you guys have paintings. Who's the artist that did the portraits that are hanging up there now?
His name's Marcus Zotter.
All right, and then how'd that come about? And honestly, I mean, how did that fit in with your guys' aesthetic?
So Marcus lives in Florida, and his uncle, Randy, actually lives in the Mexican War Streets. So I know his uncle fairly well, and just randomly, Marcus was in Pittsburgh.
Randy, like Randy Gilson, Randy?
No, not
right.
Randy Land Randy.
All right.
Different Randy.
I was like, if that's that Randy, I've never heard him actually referred to as just Randy. I was like, Jesus.
No, not him. But Marcus was in town doing another show, and his uncle reached out to me and asked me if he could do a live painting. And at this point, we were at a garage. This was kind of the interim location between the firehouse and where we currently are.
Yeah.
It was a garage off Brighton Road that we were just kind of having little events in and whatnot.
Yeah.
And one of the events was Marcus painting, and kind of his specialty is he gets doors, like a front door, and then paints portraits more or less on them.
Yeah.
So when he came up, he did a portrait of Andy Warhol, which we then purchased from him because it was really cool. And it was local, so that was kind of an interesting thing to have, Northside Andy Warhol. So when we were kind of redecorating, rethinking how we wanted to identify and put art on the walls, we thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a bunch of Pittsburgh faces on the walls?
Yeah.
But not your typical Pittsburgh faces that you would, immediately think of.
Like Chuck Noll, well, Warhol always comes to mind, but makes the sports figurines, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Sports heavy, so we wanted to go more artistic, even though we do have Myron Cope. He is one of the people, but when you think of sports, I don't think Myron Cope's the first person that comes to mind.
That's, I think, for old Pittsburghers, perhaps, but definitely not the young bloods.
For those of you that don't know, Myron Cope invented the terrible towel and was an announcer for the Steelers back in the 90s. Very expressive dude, made up a bunch of cool words. So we just wanted characters. We wanted characters more than anything. So he was able to come up, and within 4 or 5 days, he did the graffiti in the bathrooms, and then I just showed him portraits of the people that we wanted. Myron Cope, Betty Davis, who is actually a North Side local that was married to Miles Davis, and she was a funk singer back in the 70s. Mr. Rogers, and my dogs, who are local Northsiders as well. So he was able to pull all that off. And he did a Bob Dylan portrait, which people ask, is Bob Dylan from Pittsburgh? No, he's not, but I just really wanted a Bob Dylan. So
Makes sense. Any more portraits in the near future then, or you got no more space for it, really?
So Marcus is coming back up on April 28th,
right.
And he's going to do a live portrait. We have music playing that night. Angela Autumn, who's a singer-songwriter, local, she's going to be playing some songs, and he's going to be painting while she's playing. we're asking for some suggestions on who he should do, and then he's going to auction it off or something like that. So,
Are you guys going to try to keep it Northside related then, or just strictly Pittsburgh?
no parameters on this one.
All right.
Open-ended.
I can imagine you guys get quite a bit, but you do a lot of music out of Bier's Pub now, but you have a musical background, yeah?
I do.
So, how much of influence then do you want Bier's Pub to have then in that scene?
In the music scene?
Yeah.
I mean, I want it to be a nice place where people can go on the north side and eat dinner, hang out with friends, and listen to good music. I don't want it to be a club or like the Rex Theater or anything big, massive. Like, it doesn't have the capability of being that. But there needs to be more music in the city of Pittsburgh. Local musicians need more outlets to show their stuff, and people need more places to go and listen to good music.
Now, I say, where does that passion for music then come from? Where did that get started then?
I was playing music, since I was in 8th grade. And then I went to college for music. My undergraduate degree is from a college in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And so, I like performing. I used to run concerts there and do shows all the time, organizing events. So I just kind of tied that into the brewery and the restaurant and thought it would be a nice addition to have some local music.
Yeah. Now, the reason I ask is you started the Imbibe with Mattress Factory there, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you have a pretty big penchant for the arts, though, too. You want to be supportive of that crowd. So how'd the whole Imbibe thing come out? And am I wrong by saying that was kind of your avenue to, showcase Warrior Streets, bring a couple craft brewers together, but still ultimately showcase local art scene?
Yeah. It started in winter of 2016. I just approached them and thought, before we could open our brewery, why not have some events and just kind of showcase what we're doing, get everybody that's in the north side together. And so I went to the Mattress Factory, which was literally the closest venue. And it's a great space. They have awesome art, and it's just a fun place to hang out.
That it is, man.
So I talked with Amanda Reinhardt, who's kind of their events manager there. She was all about the idea, so we collaborated on it. And then from there on, it's just kind of taken off to where we do it twice a year now. So there'll be another one in July.
And say, how's the turnout for that? You guys get a couple hundred people, yeah? You guys sell out almost like immediately.
We do. The first one we did for free, which with a suggested donation. So we learned quite a bit from that.
Yeah.
I think there was probably about 1,000 people that showed up, and the capacity was 300. So there was a lot of angry people that didn't get to come in that night.
Yeah.
So then we learned to limit it. The winter one is only about 300 people, and then the summer one, which we can go outside, is a lot bigger. So that's coming up in July, and we can have, several hundred people there.
Nice. Now, when you bring those together, the two, with the craft brews and everything else, I know the last one you had just pretty much Northside breweries. How much of a focus is that then, too, keeping it Northside related? And actually it's going to be Pittsburgh related, but do you want to just, I don't want to say cut off the rest of the other 30-some breweries, or I should say 25-some, but how much of a focus is then just keeping it that local, hyper-local, with ACB, Penn, Spring Hill?
I think the winter one, that's the primary focus because it's so small and it's inside, so you couldn't have that many venues there.
Yeah.
The summer one, I'd like to grow it to any other breweries that really want to participate.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
now, do you reach out to them then, or?
I do.
All right.
Yeah, I reach out to them. I know they get bombarded with requests because I know I do.
Yeah.
There's a festival this weekend. We want you to donate beer, which is a really bad request for anybody that's considering doing that out there. Donating beer is a really difficult thing for anybody to do.
How so?
It's expensive, and it takes a lot of time and heart to make each batch of beer. And so for, organizations out there, I know there's nonprofits that need things like that. And if you're large enough and can do it, that's awesome. But please understand that even breweries of the largest scale get hit with every day. I'm talking 5, 6 questions on donating beer to this event. I have this event coming up. Can you come pour beer at it for free? It's a big ask of anybody.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Now, traveling back to the actual tap room itself, do you have any plans to bottle or anything? I mean, again, kind of comes back to your staff, and since you're a one-man band, I imagine nothing in the immediate future, but do you want to do anything with cans? I know you have the growlers at Bier's Pub now. But is it still just going to be, you come in, pour a pint, fill a growler, donezo on that end?
For the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, canning's kind of the hot commodity right now, and perhaps one day we could get into that. That would be great. But right now, I just need to make enough beer for the taps, and we can worry about canning.
Yeah. Now, when you run out of War Streets, then what's your backup plan with that? You said like you have the guest beers. Is it immediate something out of the go, or you just shut the tap off for a bit, see what else you got? How's that go?
Yeah, I mean, depending on when it happens, I usually have backups. But like tonight, I think there's 2 or 3 taps that are just off because I don't have any beer to put on them.
Gotcha.
That'll change soon.
I imagine. Then, but the tap room actually opened, what, St. Patty's weekend, yeah? Was your guys' first full weekend?
That was, yeah.
How'd that treat you guys?
It's actually pretty good. We had some live music. We had a bagpipe player come in, played during brunch, and then we had 2 members from The Cause, which is kind of a Grateful Dead cover band, more or less. They came in and played. Good crowd, but not a bad St. Patty's Day crowd at all. Very polite and considerate.
Which is always good. Avoiding the Southside stigmas that you are not so fond of. Now, on that note of the Southside, though, are you ever worried about basically how North Shore is blowing up and getting a bit more of that kind of crowd? Do you guys get any of the foot traffic coming up from there? Or is it mostly just foot traffic from games and whatnot?
It's mostly from games. I mean, when Stage A, he has concerts, we do get some people from that as well. But, you know, unless there's a really big event going on, I think most of the North Shore traffic stays on the North Shore. And we get a lot of neighborhood people. Now,
are you happy with that, or would you like to see more North Shore visitors kind of take the hike up? It's a short walk, but
I'm not against anybody that wants to come check out the brewery, the pub. I think it's anybody's welcome. Yeah. But I also love the neighborhood people too. They're great they're consistent. They always come in and they always have a good time.
So. But as I ask is, we talked about the North Side kind of stigma before, and do you think a lot of times people don't even know outside of immediate residents that you're up on Western Ave, or that there are so many craft breweries just on the North Side in general like that?
Yeah. It's a little bit of both, honestly. A lot of people come into town that are going to the Science Center or the casino that are looking for a place that's not on the North Shore. So we get, I didn't even know this place was here. So that's great, but it's also, that's kind of the purpose of the Brewers Guild, is to put these new little places on the map so that people that are into craft beer or that are visiting Pittsburgh would say, there's a brewery right up the street from where we're staying.
Gotcha. Now, with the Brewers Guild then, too, I mean, we just briefly mentioned about the cans, but are you guys going to do any special packaging then, too, with the 3 brewery kind of one-offs? Or is that just going to be the day of kind of event?
I'm pretty sure it's just going to be day of, and then those breweries will have it at their tap room as well.
All right.
I think the canning, I don't know this for sure. Maybe some teams would decide to do that. But,
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think the expense that would go into that would create some complications.
Gotcha. And then, how really did the Brew Guild kind of get started then? Who was the ringmaster, so to speak, in that regard?
I don't know for certain, but I know Brian Eaton from Grist House.
Okay.
He's kind of the chairperson of the whole guild right now.
Gotcha.
So I imagine he had a lot to do with it. I know the guys from Brew Gentlemen were heavily involved, and 11th Hour Brewing in Lawrenceville was heavily involved. Hitchhiker, they're kind of like a Dancing Gnome. They're kind of like the committee, more or less, that the board.
Gotcha. I just picture like a bat signal of a pint glass going up. You guys just rally together and meet. But no, it's pretty awesome. With the tour and everything else, I know we already touched on that a bit. But how impactful do you think that is, not just for Warrior Streets, but just this scene in general, though, and kind of putting Pittsburgh on the map? I'm not sure. I mean, I guess Portland's always the city that kind of gets talked about. Houston's a pretty good craft beer scene as well. But how much do you think then it really pushes Pittsburgh forward as far as being a destination for craft brewers in the States?
It's definitely a step in the right direction. Most other cities have guilds already. So the fact that we're just forming one now we're already kind of behind, but better late than never.
Yeah.
And Allegheny County has more breweries than any other county in the whole state of Pennsylvania. So that's a huge proponent for people to want to come here. And Pennsylvania as a whole produced the most beer in the country last year. So that's another, interesting statistic to think about.
Well, we do have the oldest brewery, so.
We do. We do.
But do you think then any talk then, and this, I mean, actually, I'm not sure you're going to have an answer on this one, but since you guys do have the most in Allegheny County, any talk to kind of team up with some of the Philly breweries and then doing cross? I mean, I know Victory and Southern Tier are already tied to the hip, but
yeah,
outside of that, I mean, any talk with anybody across the way?
I haven't personally, but I wouldn't put it out of the question.
All right.
It's a long trip.
Nah, it's only about 5 hours. Not too bad.
Yeah, I don't usually cross a bridge, so.
But no, we're on back to the Benjamins and the business side, the stressful side for you. How integral is it for you to kind of keep the staff you have in place and bring them on board? Was there any sort of issues then with inherited staff? And naturally, since you already worked there, I'm sure you had pretty good working relationships with everyone there, but was there any sort of friction then when you guys did buy it out and turn it over, and anything you had to kind of troubleshoot from there?
We were pretty lucky. We got a good staff. They basically all stayed and transitioned over. As time went on, we've lost a few people that were formerly from Benjamin's, but that happens with any business. Overall, we couldn't have done it without them. We really needed all the cooks. They knew all the recipes way better than I knew them or Abby knew them. They knew a lot of little intricate things that you don't think about that they were able to, kind of bring to light. The bar staff's awesome. They knew the clientele really well, so it all just kind of clicked. And there was some awkwardness with transitioning from being a co-worker to now owning the bar, that all the people you used to bartend and work with now essentially work for you.
You signed their checks, yeah.
So, yeah, that took some getting used to on both sides, I'm sure. I know it took some getting used to. I'm still getting used to it on my end. And but overall, I think everybody's working pretty well together.
I mean, it's awesome in that sense. It's a terrible answer on my end because I can't really follow it up with anything else. Maybe it's everything kind of fell in place. But no, I mean, were you kind of surprised by that though? Anyway.
I mean, I had worked with everybody, so I kind of hoped that it would turn out that way. But yeah, you're always worried, anxious. I'd never done anything like this before.
Gotcha.
I was going from, I just wanted to open a brewery and have basically me and the other owner at that point be the only employees.
Yeah.
So now we have 15 people that work at the bar. So that was a little different.
Now, you open for lunch and dinner, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Any talk on shutting down the lunch, just doing dinner? How are you guys going to go about it as you phase in a bit more of the brews? Because right now, I mean, you're just focused on brews, and then any part of service you're also involved with, or is that just more the back end as far as your guys' overall business plan and direction? How much are you involved in both facets?
I'm involved in pretty much everything that goes on. I think my official title is CJO, Chief Janitorial Officer. So I clean the toilets, I buy the food. Abby does a lot of scheduling, a lot of inventory. I do the brewing. just you got to wear a lot of hats. You can't say, that's not my job.
Gotcha.
So in terms of hours, we're closed on Mondays now, which was a decision we made. We were open 7 days a week when we initially took over.
Yeah.
And we did that for 3 or 4 months until December. And then just kind of made the decision that we'll close on Mondays for the winter. And then when baseball season starts back up, we'll open back up on Mondays. And then as of Monday this week, we decided that, because it was opening day, let's just go ahead and stay closed on Mondays.
Yeah. I mean, sleep's important, especially with how many different hats you guys are wearing. But, no, with the separate duties, there's more. Is Abby the other co-owner? Is she more going to focus on front of house then, and you're more brewing and on the back end operations in that regard?
Yeah, should have given a better answer on that. Yeah, Abby does a whole lot of stuff, more than I even know.
Yeah.
But she essentially is the front of house manager. She handles, the whole bar staff, scheduling, issues that come up, inventory. She bartends 3 or 4 days a week, so she pretty much holds the place together.
Gotcha. Now, any staple kind of brews, though, too, you're going to have on? I know we talked about this off the air before, but with an Enterbrew, I know it gives you a bit of flexibility to where you can kind of try one-off kind of things a bit more often than other breweries. But now that you're rocking and rolling a bit more, is there anything that's guaranteed customers are talking about? Like, hey, you went to Palo Alto, needs to stay, or is it still keeping a pretty happy rotation?
I want to do 6 staple beers.
Right.
That's always been the plan. It's just implementing it that's been the problem. So, but there will be 6 staple beers, which were the original ones from back when we started, that are the War Streets. Arch Street Amber Ale, Palo Alto Pale Ale, the Resaca Red Ale, the Buena Vista Brown Ale, Monterey IPA, and the Sherman Avenue Stout.
Yep.
Those will be the 6, kind of a good spectrum of dark to light with some hoppy beers, and then we'll have 1 or 2 seasonals that would be a wheat ale in the summer, porters in the winter, saisons in the spring, just little things like that.
Gotcha. Now, it's a bit of a loaded question, though. Now to be a Northside resident, got the War Streets. Now you have the passion behind that and enjoy the neighborhood. But any worries on development in the actual area? And are you excited about any sort of foot traffic coming over for the East Ohio district, kind of coming over on that end? Or you still feel it's a bit too segregated right now? To Allegheny West, you guys kind of operate a bit different than, but the next closest is Federal Galley, right in Nova Place there, and then East Ohio, across the way they just got Park House.
Yeah.
Do you still feel like it's pretty disjointed at the moment?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
And I mean, any thoughts? You hoping it changes? I mean,
yeah, it would be great. I think it should be a cohesive neighborhood where you can walk from Deutschtown to Allegheny West and have a bunch of nice places to stop at along the way.
Yeah.
Right now, I mean, Central Northside is kind of a dead zone where, City of Asylum's great, but other than that, there's really no place to
it's
go.
basically purgatory. Yeah.
Yeah, so I hope something happens with that. I know that's a hot issue right now on the north side, so I don't want to touch it too much, but
I mean, that's the north side in general. That's why I ask, because I mean, you have an awesome neighborhood watering hole that's, immediate residents Allegheny West like it. I'm gonna come across from Georgetown. I like stopping in there. I know a couple of my neighbors go in there, but still, it's always like, all right, once you post up at a certain spot, you kind of have to post up, and that's it. You might shoot down, you might start at Federal Galley and walk down, or vice versa. But ultimately, there's nobody really open late to where you can kind of bar hop around or really check out other areas. It's really, once you make a stop on north side, you got to settle in and just, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's difficult because it isn't as attractive as it should be.
Yeah, I mean, the North Shore has that where you can bar hop more or less from 5 or 6 different places throughout the night.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have the same kind of feel. I mean, that's like a new north side versus the old or more real north side, which is Deutschtown, Central North Side, Allegheny West.
Yeah, but I don't think Allegheny City ever wanted a cigar bar in the middle of it. I think everyone just kind of smoked cigars and drank beer at the same time.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. North Shore, it's good because it's drawing the attention, but as I said too, with how much foot traffic you get from that, then it's still even cut off just from. I don't want to sit there and call them tourists, but North Shore visitors that are just coming to North Shore to go to Tequila Cowboy, or like, well, eventually Burn will be in there, aren't really going to venture up then and check it out. So that's why at the Brewmasters Guild, it's cool that you guys are kind of pinpointing a said map and location, being like, all right, hey, you know what? You're in this destination, literally half mile down the road. Go check this out, which is awesome. Which honestly, I didn't even ask too with how you guys are doing that with the map and distribution. I know you guys are doing the main event, but how are you guys gonna get the word out on that? Is there gonna be an actual map? Are you guys gonna display it at, say, War Streets?
Yeah. So the plan is that every brewery would participate and have it there, promote it. We applied for a grant from the state, because this year the state of Pennsylvania released over $1 million to promote brewery tourism within the state. So they were releasing funds to a lot of different tourist organizations, and we happen to get one. Gotcha. So we're going to use those funds to release the prints of the guild map and everything, and have that initial event to kind of showcase it, get the word out, and hopefully from there it'll just kind of grow organically.
Nice. This is a bit oddball question, but any cities though to where their craft beer scene, you definitely hoping Pittsburgh kind of emulates. But you saw something over there. I hate saying R&D and research development in that sense, but not anything that definitely you were like, hey, you know what? They're doing it really well. What can we kind of implement now that you guys have the guild? How much is that conversation happening?
I really think Asheville, North Carolina is a great beer town.
Yeah.
I mean, they're miles ahead of where Pittsburgh currently is. But we're a much larger city with, many more buildings, infrastructure, people, etc., that hopefully we can make a pretty big mark on the map. But they've got breweries that are essentially right across the street from one another, and they're both doing really, really well. It's a destination that people that are visiting Asheville know that that's what they're getting into. They're going to go to 5 or 6 different breweries in a night. So I would really like to emulate kind of a lot of what they're doing down there. It's a supportive community. It's interesting. There's a lot of cool different projects going on, and that attracts cool people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what we were talking about with separation of North Side then too. You kind of get stuck with your clientele in a roundabout way, to where this will hopefully negate that to a large degree. Any talk then too of having your beer guest taps on any other locations?
Yes, I've been approached about that on many occasions, and my answer always is, as soon as I have enough for my pub, I definitely want to sell it to other places and have it available. I know most recently Threadbare Cider, they want to have it on tap. I promise I will if you're listening. It's just going to take me some time. So yeah, that's definitely in the works.
Speaking of Threadbare, I mean, with Wiggle and Boyd and Blair, any sort of collaborations then on the extra, other distilleries around here?
So as far as what I've done is collaborating with them, I've aged some of my beers in their barrels.
Okay.
I've done like a gin IPA in the Jennifer Wiggle barrel.
Is that process a bit different than your average brewer then?
Yeah. Basically, you would take your finished beer, more or less, and then transfer it into a barrel and let it age in there for anywhere from 2 weeks to however long you want to let it sit in there.
Gotcha.
And kind of collect those flavors. So like for the gin barrel, I left it in there for 2 weeks, and it was all the flavor I could ever want out of it. But with like a bourbon barrel, you could leave it in there for a long time.
Makes sense. Then any other collabs in that regard, though? They're coming up or anything in the works?
Nothing planned, but things can always develop quickly around here.
Gotcha. Anybody that you would want to collab, how about that?
In terms of distilleries?
Yeah. Besides Threadbare and naturally the sister company, Wiggle, or I should say parent company.
Yeah. I don't really know the guys at Maggie's Farm, but their rum is awesome.
Yeah.
And I made a red ale that was aged in a Wiggle rum barrel. So I'd be curious to kind of see what their spirits would bring to the table for a beer, just off the top of my head. I know another guy, Blake Ragianti, is starting a distillery in the Strip. He's starting Port of Pittsburgh Distillery. I know he's been at that for a long time, and he makes some interesting stuff, so that'd be cool too.
Nice. Now, tailing it back a bit with the tap room, everything else. Now, do you have that in order? What's your goal the next year then? Because I feel like now you kind of have everything in place. You have the tap room built. You got your thing going. Naturally, you need a brewmate in there. Someone else going to help you out. But what can we expect then from Moore Streets / Bier's Pub?
I plan to get enough beer to fill all the taps and have that be a consistent thing. That's my first and foremost goal. When it starts getting nice out, we're going to open the beer garden in the back. We have a nice little patio area. So that'll be just strictly a beer garden where people can stand, hang out, drink beers, and then, keep the restaurant going, simplify things a little bit so that we can focus on what we're really good at.
Now, when you put the tap room in there, though, too, did that eliminate any seats, or did that add more seats for you guys?
It added more seats.
Right.
Not many, just kind of a different layout that made it feel more open.
There was a bunch of couches in there before, yeah?
Yeah, it was not utilized to the best of its ability. So now we can have music in the back and still have 3 or 4 more people that would be sitting up there otherwise.
Gotcha. Val, how much do you want this to, how much food is going to be shifted out then? Your ultimate goal here. I know you said burgers and brews, but the menu right now you guys got was what? Say about 35 items on it?
At least.
I mean, you're looking to cut that basically in half?
No, I mean, I don't want to give any number like that. We're still tweaking it. We can always bring things back if there's an uproar over, something being taken off the menu. But we're basically just trying to find the kind of equation that makes it easier on us, inventory, staff-wise, and operational-wise, that we can still have a brunch on the weekends, still do lunch and dinner, but really make it simple on everybody.
I imagine, brunch is your guys' the money maker, I imagine. But in that context with the menu, when you came in, I mean, how much did you, being a first-time owner, how much did you realize kind of, all right, you know what, we had to kind of tail back, we can't do it all at once? How much of a learning curve was that then, just to get the feel for basically the restaurant industry from the ownership perspective?
I'm still feeling it. Yeah, I mean, we inherited everything. The former owner had a really good menu put together, so we didn't want to change it overnight, but it was a lot to take on. Yeah, it was running to Restaurant Depot, orders from 4 or 5 different vendors. It was a lot to learn, like when are they coming, how to coordinate, all that stuff. So all of those things combined over the course of 8 months have kind of led us to want to really hone in on making this operation simpler on everybody.
Gotcha. How much feedback then, too, do you get from your clients? And honestly, naturally, since you inherited most of your staff, I mean, how involved are they in the process then, too?
Which process?
As far as menu changes, how much do they, naturally, I mean, you and your co-owner have the last final say, naturally. How much do they come up to you and be like, hey, you know what? I think this is working for War Streets. This is working for the Bier's Pub and like the menu side. We should go this direction. How much do they kind of input for you? Just because it seems to be, every time I go in there, it seems very just family feel. It's a neighborhood bar. Everyone's kind of on the same page to where I imagine your clientele would be pretty open if something's bothering them. Be like, hey, you know what? This sucks. Get off there.
Yeah.
How much do you get that from clientele and also, too, like I said, your actual staff picking up on that and being like, you know what? People just aren't digging this.
I get it a lot, and I appreciate a lot of it. So, like, when my cooks tell me this menu is really difficult to make, it's a pain to put together, to prep, I take that to heart. Or when other staff tell me this drink is really terrible to put together. Customers always share their opinions.
Whether you like it or not, yeah.
So that's just the nature of how it goes.
So that's got to be a plus, though, not having to deal with as many customers on the front end through the whole service. You can at least shoot down the basement, make some beer, and get in your zone, though. That's got to be a little bit of a plus.
I don't like to hide from confrontation. I'll usually just greet it head on.
Yeah, I got you. Customer's not always right. I hear you. But I mean, that's got to be a whole different headache for you then as well.
We got good clientele. We do. Everyone in the neighborhood's pretty great.
Well, the north side is, I'd say, the best neighborhood in Pittsburgh. I mean, I'm not biased by any means, but
I would agree.
But what's on tap right now? What do you got?
Not much, but I have the Palo Alto Pale Ale. I have a Sampsonia Street Smoked Porter. And this weekend, because I've run out of all of our other beers, I'm going to put on some of those barrel-aged beers that I had. So we'll have the Gin IPA on for a limited time, a brown ale that I had in a rye whiskey barrel, and I believe a bourbon stout. And other than that, we've got Yellow Bridge's IPA, we've got Grist House IPA, a blonde from Hitchhiker, a stout from Hitchhiker, cider from Threadbare. So just kind of all across the board.
Now, outside of War Streets, even outside of Pittsburgh, unless there is something that really kind of nails it, what are the breweries that like you drink and dig?
When I get a chance to go out, which is rare, but I mean, honestly, I know they're one of the older breweries in the city, but I really like Penn Brewery. I think they put out some exceptional beers. They've won gold medals for them, so I dig them a lot. And their place is awesome. The more time you spend there, there's just caves that go on forever. It's pretty amazing.
Catacombs, yeah.
So they're great, but then some of the newer guys like Grist House, I really love going there and hanging out. It's awesome space. Yeah. Hitchhiker's new spot's really cool. But I mean, then the local guys like Allegheny City, I would never look at that building and think that you could put a brewery in there, but they're doing it, and they're putting out great beers too, so that's awesome.
Anybody outside of Pittsburgh, then?
Oh, outside of Pittsburgh?
Like if you got a top 5 list that, these are the 5 beers that need to try, recommend to somebody, what are they?
The ones I would recommend you probably wouldn't find on the shelf. You'd have to physically go to that place.
All right.
Like 2nd Street Brewery in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Okay.
That's one of my favorites. I used to go there pretty much daily. In Florida, I really like Cigar City. They make High Lie IPA.
And I mean, what's the selling point on these beers too? Because I have zero knowledge on any of these. So I mean,
2nd Street's a brewery, so they've got all kinds of different beers.
Yeah.
But just in terms of what they're putting out stylistically, it's top notch across the board. So I really dig them. And in Florida, the craft brewery scene's just kind of getting started there. So it's kind of a newer thing, and you can kind of see how these places are developing and what they're putting out. So that's cool. Trying to think what you could see, honestly, on the shelf-wise. But like a more macro brewery, Sweetwater, I think really puts out some exceptional beers.
Sweetwater,
they're out of Athens, Georgia.
Okay.
You can get that in stores here, so I really like that stuff as well.
Gotcha.
Rheingeist from Cincinnati.
Rheingeist is honestly probably one of my faves.
Yeah.
The whole brew house over there. Cincy amazed me as a town-wise. Totally kind of blew me away, but
similar to Pittsburgh, it really is.
As far as layout and everything else, yeah, I was kind of surprised by that.
Yeah.
I mean, I still hate the bungles, but Cincy definitely, I warmed up to pretty quick. I was like, this town's not that bad. It was Rheingeist and Taft brew house down there.
Yeah.
I was pretty thoroughly impressed with. But yeah, the layout of the city though too. It's basically spitting image of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I don't know if they have 3 rivers, but they got a few.
Yeah.
They got a couple at least.
So that's like just the layout and everything else and how it goes. I'm like, stadiums are right on the river line. It's like, hey. But I was pretty surprised by that.
But being Pittsburgh.
Oh, naturally. I mean, Ohio's a whole different beast. But no, honestly, Jake, appreciate you coming in. Appreciate you sharing the stress and the craziness you had to go through. And fortunately, I mean, as you said, I mean, you kind of lucked out with everything falling into place. But I could imagine it could have been a lot worse in that regard. But glad the Wall Street's kind of landed on its feet, so to speak, and doing your thing now, and some good things coming your guys' way then.
Thank you. Yeah, me too.
And then you said June for the guild, and we should expect that.
I'm not sure when they're going to release it. I know they're looking to have the party in August, like late August.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm at liberty to release all those details yet, but I think it's going to be late August. I think it's going to be in the north side, and there's going to be 30 breweries there, and they're going to release the map with, the whole map of where to go.
Nice. But no, thanks again, Jake. Pleasure having you on here. Everybody listening, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Neil Strebig. Going to, as always, thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for sharing on Facebook, Twitter. Always hunky-dory. As always, 7 p.m.s. You can always listen live on the YouTube channel. And this will be up this weekend, iTunes and SoundCloud. Nice little condensed version. But as always, guys, thanks for listening. And take you guys out with my all-time favorite song for this Brass Masters. Absolutely love it.